Hey there, fellow stressors. Welcome to the Stress Mess Podcast. I'm Samantha Elizabeth, the founder and master coach at Samantha Elizabeth Coaching and Consulting. As a self-proclaimed stress mess, I've discovered the true gravity of stress and its sneaky influence on every aspect of our lives. A couple years ago, I had a health scare caused by too much stress, and after my doctor's orders to stop stressing, I went on a journey to uncover the secrets of stress management. Join me and my guests on this unfiltered journey from stress mess to stress less. You are listening to episode 4, where I talked to Gika Rector. Gika did such a great job introducing herself and what she does that I'm going to let her introduce herself. However, before we begin, the magic, or not so magical part of podcasting, and in the interest of transparency, we recorded this episode at the end of September, and I am releasing it now in December. So I ask for your forgiveness for not being so timely, especially when Gika talks about an upcoming workshop in October, but everything else, including the words of wisdom that Gika provides, is timeless. So let's begin. All right, well, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself and what you do.
Well, thanks for inviting me, first of all. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Gika Rector, and I'm a personal coach, a Feldenkrais practitioner, and I also teach felt making. That's a mouthful, right? My name is Gika, which is short for Angelica. My husband always says, think of a geek to help you remember it. Felt making is where you take wool fibers and you do different things with them, and all of a sudden you get this magical new thing that's a cloth of some sort, and I teach people how to do that. I'm a personal coach. Most of you probably know what that's about. I help people get unstuck. There's something that they want to do that they can't quite get going on, so I help them with that. And then the hardest thing to explain is I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner. And what that means is that I help people move more easily in their bodies, to bring a greater awareness to how they move, to what the limitations are, and how might they move more easily, which makes all kinds of difference in their lives.
That's wonderful. So how did you get into that? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was a funny story. So I'm a fiber artist. I do felting and spinning and weaving and all that kind of stuff. And I joined this group, and a friend of mine in that group said, I have a friend who does this thing and I don't remember what it's called, but I think you'd like it. So sure enough, I met her friend, and she was a Feldenkrais teacher. I started taking her classes and really indeed did like it. And it was here in Houston. And after a while, one of the other teachers organized a training program, and I thought, oh, I could do that. So I took the training, partly because I thought, oh, it'll help me to move my own body better, to improve my posture. I can just do things more better. And as it turned out in the training, I really liked being a Feldenkrais teacher, to teach other people some of the things that I had learned. And it's magic.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like such a wonderful, peaceful practice as well. I know when we were first talking here, I was telling you about, my posture, sitting here, even doing the podcast. And for those that are watching on YouTube, they're going to see that my first couple of podcasts, I'm kind of hunched over, in it, because I didn't have it set up where my microphone was at the right positioning. And so, with that, working on the posture and everything, do you feel like it strengthens your back? And, how do you think it helps, physically in your body?
So what's interesting about it is our bodies, we have the skeleton, right? And Feldenkrais like to say that the purpose of the skeleton is to make us feel weightless. So here we are on a planet that has gravity, right? So if we pay just attention to gravity, we would sink down lower and lower. But our skeleton, because we have bones, we're not amoeba, we're not little jellyfish, we have bones. And so when we get our bones aligned in a really comfortable way, we can be upright in gravity, and it's almost effortless.
Mm.
The other thing that's really cool about the way this process works is that it's not something you have to think about. When I was a kid, I had terrible posture. My mom was always trying to get me to straighten up, which would make me want to go like this, like, no, she told me to straighten up. No, I'm not going to do that. Or I'd try really hard. I'd put my shoulders back and I'd, stick my chest out and try to be upright. That's a lot of effort and it's not sustainable. And if you do that all the time, then you just wear out those muscles.
Mm.
But what we do is find ways that it's easy for us to be upright. And we do it through a series of lessons, either verbally guided, or sometimes if it's one-to-one, I can use my hands to guide people. And our nervous systems are so smart that they take that information and they integrate it. And before you know it, whether you want to or not, you've changed how you move and it's easier.
Wow, that's so great. So
I like it.
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it sounds, so much, peaceful and, being able to, work on your body's strength and, to make, like you said, your skeletons light as air, and I think that's fantastic. So how do you feel like it kind of helps with your stress management?
Um, so as a personal coach, one of the things that my trainer in that arena talked about was acknowledgement, and that we acknowledge one another for what we've done or results that we've gotten.
Mm.
And the other thing that a lot of us feel like is we feel maybe alone or like we're in this by ourselves or nobody really sees us for who we are. And there's something magical when we're going through something that's stressful and somebody looks at us and says, I get it. I was listening to something the other day and this woman said, if I were in your shoes, I would feel exactly the way you do. So there's something really, you can feel yourself when you hear that kind of message, you just settle down. You feel like, okay, it's okay to be me. It's okay to be stressed. It's okay to be whoever I am right in this moment.
Mm.
And the process of Feldenkrais, because we're paying attention to our bodies, we're paying attention to how we move, to where it's easy, where it's not so easy. It's like our whole bodies feel seen, and it's really nice for your nervous system. You just end up feeling calmer, and that alleviates the physicality of the stress, which allows us to be more open to different possibilities and to move forward, not stay stuck in whatever's got us stressed out.
Yeah, I completely see that. And I'm curious to know, I do a lot of yoga practice. I'm not a yogi or anything like that, but
Mhm.
I'm curious to know kind of like what are the similarities and differences, in fact, between that and yoga.
Right. So I've done yoga. I started doing that. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, quite a few. And it's a lovely practice. It's amazing. And the teachers that I had were very much interested in alignment, like
Hmm.
looking at how our bodies naturally align. And that was great. And in yoga, in hatha yoga, the physical practice of yoga, you end up going into a posture and maybe you hold that posture for some moments and then maybe you move to another posture. And so there's some attention to how you feel in that posture. And if you're doing something like Iyengar, various styles, sometimes they'll have blocks or things to support you and make it easy for you to be in that orientation. Feldenkrais does more in terms of sequences of movements. So when we do an awareness through movement lesson, I guide people through a sequence of movements, and they might be lying on their back. And then I'll ask them to do certain things. So pay attention to how it is to lie on their back. And then maybe they'll rock their pelvis back and forth. I'm doing it in sitting, and you can see I'm moving my pelvis, but you can see that other parts of me are moving in response.
Mm.
So as we do that movement, the Feldenkrais teacher or practitioner will call attention to what else is happening, what else might you bring your attention to. And generally we do things in fairly slow, gentle movements. Sometimes we'll be real sneaky. We'll start out with something that's kind of hard to do and then do something simpler and then come back to the original thing that was hard to do. And suddenly it got easier.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, I think Feldenkrais was a real genius in terms of looking at, for example, a difficult movement and figuring out what it is that gets in our way of being able to do it. And having us do different things, it kind of sneaks in around the back or the corner and finds easier ways to do it. I'm trying to think of a good example. So if I have a hard time lifting my shoulder, most people don't. We tend to walk around like this, and so shoulders get real tight. But what if your shoulder's sore and somebody says, lift your shoulder, and you're like, oh no, that hurts. Well, what if you just brought your ear to your shoulder? It's the same movement. It's bringing the ear closer to the shoulder or the shoulder closer to the ear. But if you think it's your shoulder that's the limitation and you go like that, all of a sudden this is easier.
Oh, that's interesting.
Sneaky, right? Sneaky.
Yeah, that is sneaky. Just another way to look at it too. I mean, it's like you don't have to do that particular action. There's another action that you can do that does the same thing.
Right.
That's really cool.
You could slow it way down and do it smaller. So if this is really hard, then maybe I'll just lift my shoulder this much. That's easy. I can do that. It's no big deal. And I do that and I notice how I do it. And I notice if anything else moves, like my weight shifts on my chair. And all of a sudden this is easier. Partly because my nervous system figured out, well, it's not so bad. I didn't go to the limit. It didn't hurt. And so now I feel free to go a little farther.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So how did somebody get started in that? Is it something that they can, practice on their own, or do they need a teacher, or a little bit of both?
I think it's great to start with a teacher. And we Feldenkrais teachers do things in groups with verbal guidance through sequences of movements, or sometimes we'll have somebody come into our studio and do a hands-on thing. Usually somebody, first of all, they're dressed. It's not like massage. You just come in dressed comfortably. Usually you would lie down on a low massage table. And instead of asking you to lift your arm, I might hold your elbow and move your arm in the direction of your shoulder. As an example, since that's the example we use. So I use different movements and touch to bring awareness to how that movement feels, where it's easy, where it's not so easy, and how it's connected to other parts of the body.
Oh, interesting. You do virtual sessions too, though, don't you?
I do online group sessions and online individual sessions. So the online individual sessions, I would use my words to guide someone through movements. But with it one-to-one, it's easier for me to look at. For example, if I was working with you and you were doing your thing with your microphone, we could talk about different ways to get closer to the microphone or farther away. And I would guide you through some movements and also guide you through ways of paying attention to how you're moving, so that there's something about, one of my teachers calls it shining a light on it. Like, so I can get my face closer to the microphone by bending my neck. But I could also roll back in my pelvis and round my back and lengthen my back, and then I get closer. So there are a lot of different ways.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, and like, I feel like I'm still young, but I feel like my body is definitely aging. And, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I've got, a hurt shoulder or something, just from simply how I slept that night. Yeah. So would you recommend like Feldenkrais to be able to, to be able to alleviate that, or what would you recommend?
Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of it. I think it does all kinds of magical things. And one of the things in our culture, and this has to do with stress too, we have a lot of messages that say, push through it.
Yeah.
Put on your big girl panties. My friend says, put on your big girly knickers and move on, do what you got to do. And sometimes when we do that, we push past the messages that our bodies are giving us, that there's something wrong here, that we need to pay attention so we can slow down, back off, do something a little bit differently instead of continuing to wear and tear
Yeah.
on part of our body, whether it's the shoulder or the pelvis or the elbow or whatever, or whether it's just our general nervous system being stressed all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, like normally if that happens, I get up right away, take an ibuprofen, and just get back, just get to work and everything. I might, I've got one of those desks that, lower and, raise, and I might just raise my desk that day, depending on what position I need to be in. Cause, normally it's, something where it's connected to your tailbone, to your shoulder
Right.
bone, and what is causing the pain. Right. So
Right.
it's better to stand than it is to sit.
Yeah. And it's really nice to do different things. I mean, when we stay in one position for any long period of time, we're not getting things moving and flowing. We have fluids that move through our body, but if we stay really still, they don't move so well. And it's not just the blood system, but also our joints have synovial fluid. But the nervous system doesn't know to send that fluid to the joint until we move it. When we move the joint, then the nervous system goes, oh, you're using it. Let's bring some attention to it. Let's give it some fluid. If we don't move it, then it just kind of gets stuck.
Wow, I love that. Because the thing is, like, I just try, like quick fix or something like that. I got to get out, gotta either get on the road or something like that, get to
And
your job
sometimes
or.
that's, yeah. And sometimes that's exactly what we need to do. But if we do it a whole lot, then we can cause damage. One of my favorite metaphors is like a car, like you get in your car and it's out of alignment, but you got to go to that meeting. So you go to that meeting and then you forget about it and you keep going to other things. And pretty soon you're wearing and tearing on your tires and maybe on the axle. And, now I'm out of my expertise. I don't know that much about cars, but it's not good for your car.
Yeah.
So you go in, you get your car aligned, and then you can move along and it runs more smoothly and it lasts longer. It's
Yes.
similar with our bodies.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that. So if somebody does want to get, involved or, to work with you, how would they contact you or reach out to you?
Just go to my website, which is gika.info. You can sign up for my mailing list or you can book an appointment or whatever. I'm
That's
really
awesome.
happy to talk to people. And as I said, I do group sessions. I do individual sessions. I have a workshop coming up at the Jung Center of Houston. I'm excited about that. It's called Unlocking the Rib Cage, Opening the Heart. It's a mini Feldenkrais retreat. It'll be on Saturday, October 28th in the afternoon.
Oh, wonderful. That's my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday on that day.
Yeah. That sounds like a good idea. To go out and do that.
And then I should also mention that I offer for anybody who's interested, whether it's coaching or Feldenkrais or felt making, you could just set up a consultation. I do a free 20-minute session just to talk about what you're interested in and see if what I do might be useful.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. I gotta say that, ever since I've known you, you've always been, such a calming presence, in any room that you enter in. And, I gotta say that, you're just, somebody that I see and I'm like, goodness, she doesn't have any stress. Do you have any stress? Or you just.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely I have stress. And I try to pay attention to it and to do things that allow it not to wear me out. And first, before anything else, when I think about stress, I want to recognize that it's functional. Stress is an important part of our lives as humans. It's an important part of what happens on this planet. And I love Seth Godin talked about going out ice skating and he thought, oh, this is so cool. It's just like no friction, just float on the ice. And then he brought his dog on the ice And the dog couldn't do anything because the pads of the dog's paws were so smooth. There literally was no friction. And so he couldn't move. He just splat. So we need that friction. Sometimes we need that friction to keep us moving. If we didn't have the stress of getting hungry, we wouldn't get up and go have breakfast.
Yes.
So taking that too far, not so good.
Yes.
But stress in our nervous system creates certain conditions that prepare us for action.
I love that. I love that you say that too, because, even though part of my role, I feel, is to kind of remove friction, it is absolutely necessary, to have some friction, to get up and go in the morning. This is something that I, definitely talk about, with people too, is that, to get up and go in the morning, you need a little stress. It's usually called eustress, EU stress. And, with that, kind of stress, it really motivates you and inspires you to take action, and to do that. It's just that when you get too bogged down with it, that's when you need to do things, like the practice that you have for Feldenkrais and, your felting and everything too. And, working with materials. It sounds like you've got some good devices, in play, that help you to de-stress and not to overstress about things.
Yeah. For example, I was thinking about that recently, and I'm doing a lot with my practice, opening it up to more people, and I've gotten really busy with it, and I found myself getting kind of stressed out about it. And one of the things I realized that was creating stress for me was I was getting so busy with that I wasn't having as much time to make stuff. It's really important to me to make stuff, whether it's sewing or felting or whatever. And so I started backing up and thinking about how can I do both, and recognizing that the act of making stuff, of being creative, balances me out in such a way that I can do much better work with my clients, with my practice, with even just the business part of running a practice.
Yes. Friction, friction, and definitely in running your own business and kind of managing things yourself. A lot of times I was just talking to somebody about that the other day, and, it's just like, we're a one-stop shop for everything that we do, right? We do our own marketing and, for this podcast alone, I'm editing, I'm doing all the graphics and marketing and all of that kind of stuff. I don't have a production company yet, but
not yet. But you could aim for that.
Yes, exactly. Cool. Something that, I can definitely aim for, getting that kind of, help so I can free myself up, to be able to do more.
Absolutely. And as you go along, there are times where you can pause and look at which things are flowing well and which things are holding me back, that kind of negative friction. And how can I move my shoulder more easily? How can I move my practice more forward more easily? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. I do have a couple of things, if you'd like, that I think are really nice, easy things to do that calm our bodies.
Okay.
And one thing is, so most of us spend some time sitting, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not a bad idea to pay attention to what's going on with your feet. What part of each foot is on the floor?
Yeah.
And especially if you're not very long in the legs, a lot of people have their heels way up high.
Oh, yes.
And so if that happens to be the case for you, take a moment to just put both feet on the ground and feel both heels, whether they're in shoes or on the ground, and notice how different that feels. Mm-hmm. You have a different level of support from the ground up, and that can calm your nervous system. And your nervous system is like, oh, good, I'm not here on my own. I've got support from the ground up. And then if you pick up your heels again, you probably would notice that you sit a little differently. And if we compare ourselves to certain animals with the heels up off of the ground, your sternum goes into a different position, eyes focus differently. You're ready to move. You're ready to move. Like if you have to fly, fight or flight, you're ready to go. So you're in that part of your nervous system. And then
Oh,
when you need to rest and settle, having your heels on the ground, all of a sudden it's easier to be calm.
mm.
So
Wow.
that's
Yeah, I was going to say that it's funny when you said that. I was actually like my whole body is like twisted up like a little pretzel. So I had my ankles crossed and one foot on the ground and one was like on top of the other foot, and I realized that my body was tense, and so when you said that, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how tense I was until you said it.
so that's why we call it awareness through movement. You make a little movement and all of a sudden you have a different awareness. And you're so smart. All of us are so smart. Our nervous systems go, oh yeah, I like this
Yeah.
better. And
Yes.
so the more you notice it and the more you kind of integrate it into everyday stuff, the easier it is to calm yourself.
Yeah.
The other thing is people say, when someone's upset, they'll say, take a deep breath. But what if instead of taking a deep breath, you just exhale all the air out?
Mm. Yeah.
And there's a way you can do that. You can spend a little more time with it. You can exhale all the way, hold the air out as long as you can, maybe even puff out a little more air, and then swallow your saliva,
Mm.
and then notice what happens with your inhale. So if you exhale, 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 all of a sudden, because you've let all the air out, when you do inhale, usually it's a little bigger. You take in more oxygen. And you can even hear the difference in my voice. My voice changed.
Yeah.
I got
Definitely.
calmer. I got calmer. So
Yeah.
it's a physiological thing that happens there.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed that my breath when I breathed in after I had breathed out all my breath, I noticed that it felt more alive of the air that I was breathing in. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
yeah, it felt like it was heavier, but in a good way. You know what I mean? Like it was fulfilling me, rather than I'm just breathing.
Yeah. Yeah. And your nervous system goes, she can breathe. It's
Yes.
good. I can get oxygen. I need my oxygen. And part
Yes.
of the reason that works is that when you exhale, we think that our bodies say, oh, I need more oxygen. But really what happens is when you're not breathing very well, let me say it this way. When you exhale, exhale, you have a greater concentration of carbon dioxide. And that's what signals the nervous system to take a breath in. So it's
Mm.
not lack of oxygen, it's how much carbon dioxide is in the blood vessels and the heart, the brain. Some part of you goes, that's too much. I need to
Yeah.
take some air.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Wow. That's great. Well, you gave me a couple of really great tips, because like I said, my feet were like twisted up like pretzels, and just putting them on the ground and then concentrating on, breathing out rather than breathing in, because you're absolutely right. When we do breath work, a lot of times you concentrate on the breathing in. In fact, I was just doing a meditation the other day, and the guy that was doing the guided meditation, he said, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, until you could almost feel like your head was filled up with the air. And I was like, this is making me so uncomfortable, because I was like, when am I going to be able to take, like,
Yeah,
release
let
this,
it go.
like let it go. And he just like, and he's like, and then hold it, and I'm like, I don't know if I could hold it anymore.
And then you get all into achievement and am I
Right.
doing it right? And all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Am I doing this right? Wait, hold on one second. Did he say to breathe out now? I mean, did I miss that because I'm thinking in my head, that sort of thing. Obviously, that's not the best kind of meditation,
It's
to,
how we approach it sometimes.
yeah.
That reminded me of one of my favorite things about Feldenkrais, and it can be frustrating sometimes, is we never have a single right way to do something.
Mm.
There's just, you know, I can sit up tall
Mm-hmm.
and feel the support from the ground up. Or maybe I want to contemplate my navel, and the best way to do that is to sort of slouch. I can see my belly button. So it's a good movement. Now,
Yeah.
if I walk around like that all the time, not so great.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh man. Well, you gave me a couple of really great tips and thank you so much. And hopefully everybody else, learned those tips and, heard them and, takes them into practice in their own lives. So Gika, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Pleasure.
you sharing all of your knowledge with us. So remind everybody, how can they get a hold of you? And I'll put this in the show notes as well, too.
Okay. Okay. So my website is gika.info. And you can reach me at gika@gika.info. You can email me. And if you go to the website, and I'll give you the other contact information, you can just
Wonderful.
reach out. I love to talk with people.
Oh,
You
wonderful.
couldn't tell that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And let's go ahead and take a break.
My pleasure. Thanks for doing this.
And now, the funniest thing happened. In this segment, take a break from your stress for a funny or unbelievable story. Take it away.
So one of the funniest things that happened to me is I noticed myself getting really, really mad about something. I'm not going to use the word, I was really, really mad. And so I started cleaning up my house and I did all the dishes and I cleaned up this and that. And I was like, all right, I'm getting stuff done. And then I realized that was a pattern. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get all mad and then I get all this stuff done. And suddenly I realized I don't want to do that anymore. I don't like having that kind of energy, that negative energy to propel me. So I started paying attention a little differently to getting things done just because I wanted to do them, not because I had to get all mad first. Or at least when I got mad, maybe to express it a little sooner so it didn't get to that explosive kind of stage.
Thanks for listening to the Stress Mess podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And don't forget to tell a friend. The song for this podcast is Traveler by the talented Christian Weigand and voiceover work by David Gilbert. You can find more information about those two in the show notes. If you'd like to work with me, head on over to SamanthaElizabeth.com to book a free intro session. This has been a Be Who You Need to Be production.